Hello, it's Blockchain here coming at you with another technical analysis update. For those of you just tuning in, I'm primarily an Elliott Wave trader using other areas of Confluence and other technical analysis to really complement my price analysis. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the charts. Blockchain. Before we dive into the charts real quick, guys, I did want to let everyone know that my website is up and running. We've got a lot of big things coming out, and this is really just the first one, so make sure you guys go over there, check it out, sign up for the subscription. I will be doing some market updates, some news via email, and then the number one, which is actually going to be right underneath right about me, is the section that says get my number one trading strategy for free. Yes, that's right. I'm giving away my number one trading strategy for free that is consistent, profitable, reliable, and applicable to any market. So again, that's just underneath the About Me section. And you can also click right here where it says get my number one trading strategy for free. It'll also take you right over to the same section. So again, just sign up and I'll get that to you. It's going to be a video walkthrough of how I go step by step. So far, everyone that has watched it, there's been a couple questions, but so far I've heard great feedback from those of it. Individuals that have started to use it and put it in play. So really excited to see results from those that have put it in play. So all right, guys, let's go ahead and dive into ETH first. Being that it is Sunday night for me, I'm going to take a quick look at the weekly close. And where are we at overall? And again, guys, always look at the higher time frame, and then I'll dive into the lower, just because the lower is what makes up the higher, but it's important to have a broad picture of what it looks like. So real quick on the weekly, really the biggest thing we want to look at is just a couple of support and resistance zones that we have here, and it's where we are currently. We did have this little pump up, looks like we're sitting at 183.20 after the weekly close, which is right over this EMA. I believe this was the looks like the 55 EMA. So we did have this little pump up, so we are currently above it. However, with our close, we did close below it. So it looks like this next week will be kind of interesting to see. Do we get another pump up, try and retest a new high, or do the bears step in and just start swatting us down even lower? So that's definitely one thing that I'm looking at. Looking at the RSI for the weekly, we are getting squeezed too between the two EMAs here. So we are getting squeezed right in between these guys, and that is something that we'll want to pay attention to on the weekly, because we are just above the middle of the RSI, right above the 50. We're not really in the bullish control zone. We're somewhat neutral at the moment, so it's gonna be interesting to see what does this next week play out to be, and where does that take us? Which way are we going to break out of the RSI? So obviously we have some resistance coming up on us to get through this and get into the bullish control zone. So we'll be watching that over this next week, see how that plays out. All right, so let's go ahead and just dive straight into the 4-hour, and this one will give us maybe a little bit more clarity in the direction that we're heading. So we got a couple different things in which we're looking at, and actually if we go back to the daily real quick, one thing I do want to point out is we do have this 200 EMA on the weekly that I didn't touch base on. So right here, the 200 EMA right at 190, 191. And we also have a lot of confluence right here in 191 as well before we go into the 4-hour. So on the daily, we have the 0.5 fib, which is the overall retracement of this entire move down from our high of basically 290, coming all the way down to the low of 85. So that's our 0.5 fib retracement for this bounce. Okay, and also looking at this as a WXY correction. I can't make this whole thing impulsive. I can't see an impulsive move. There's too many invalidation points for me to make it impulsive. There's definitely some 5-way structures in there for an Elliott wave standpoint. in a motive wave. However, everything else is just tied to ABC, to WXYs, and it's just been a lot of different types of corrections. So um, in my eyes, this ultimately it needs to come back down and reset. So I am looking for another fifth wave down, come back down, possibly test the trend line, double bottom, maybe a smidge lower. We'll pay attention to some targets as we look to further downside if we do start to move in that direction, because the wave structure will tell us some idea of roughly where we can expect to go. But I am looking at this as a WXYXZ based upon our current movements that we've had over the past couple of days. So I did have this potentially as a as an ABC before right here. And we had a three-wave structure to see what this is going to connect it to, but I saw a three-wave, and it looks like it also connected this to another three-wave for a zigzag, making this a WXYXZ. My eyes, it is looking pretty complete. There's not much more I can really see it go. Like I said, this 190 zone, we have a lot of confluence. Remember, we have this 200 EMA that's sitting right here. It's also 1.236 of the 0, W, and X. And it's also the 618 of the 0, Y, and X as well. Sorry, chart's a little messy. So a lot of confluence right here in the 191 zone. So honestly, we are coming up on this trend line as well. Trend lines can be somewhat subjective, but it is another indicator that in some traders try to trade on breakouts and use that as resistance as well. So it is something I look at, but not something that I base a trade off of. So this 191 zone right here is a lot of resistance in my eyes for what I'm looking for to really kind of finish off this overall move. Maybe a wick through a little bit, but in my opinion, I don't see us going a whole lot higher. Without coming down and having some kind of reset before we can ultimately, move off in a five-way structure. So let's go into the 4 hour real quick. Gives a little bit clearer breakdown of what I'm looking at from the WXYXZ. As you can see, complex corrections after complex corrections, ABCs after ABCs. So as we look at the RSI, right here, looks like we did come back down, retest the bottom of the bullish control zone, trying to get back into it. We also can look at potential trend lines on the RSI as well for when we could potentially break one, so on and so forth. So we do have some bearish divergence. We'll see what that ultimately plays out to be. Being on the 4 hour, I wouldn't say it's played out yet, but we did have a little bit of a reset. So we may get one more little pump up for where we are currently 183, and ultimately giving us that bearish divergence coming back down. As you can see, RSI is moving lower while price is moving higher. So that's one thing that I'll also be paying attention to. And really to get it into the 70 region roughly is what I'd be looking for that divergence to really kind of kick in. And then lastly, let's dive into the 15 minutes. Let's get some most recent price action, what I'm looking to play out, and some potential trades that I may be looking at as well. So right here is the last move that we had that I was looking at potentially as a impulsive wave based upon the structure and the extensions. In my opinion, this does look to be more of a three-wave structure to create a zigzag. So you can see we did have one wave up. We had our correction, and then looks like another five-wave structure up. So in my opinion, this is an ABC. Go ahead and label that for you guys. Might make it a little bit clearer. So we're in ABC here, and then what I was looking at for the last five-wave structure is 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. So that's what I was looking at to complete the ABC. Right now, we are still in a correction, and there's a couple different things I'm looking at for potential counts on the table. So one is that we did kick off with an impulsive wave, a five-wave structure. It does measure that way. Three wave came to 1.618. The fifth wave came to the 2.236. Doesn't break any laws. So 4 did not retrace in the wave 1 territory. 2 did not go past the beginning of wave 1. and there are 5 waves in each individual structure for the move. So that is one that I'm looking at because could potentially be a 5-wave structure. Now, if it is a 5-wave, what starts with 5 needs to end with 5, and what that means is this could still be an A coming up for a B and then back down for a C, and obviously that C would be a 5-wave structure, or this could be the beginning of something larger of an overall impulsive wave move to the downside, meaning that this could be a wave 1 coming up for A2 and then down for a 3, 4, and then a 5, which would put us roughly at looks like 159 roughly. And that is if we have this B wave go all the way back up and double top at around 189, 190 in that ballpark. Now, if it does go past that and it does go higher, the only thing that invalidates is this being a wave 1. So if it does go past the beginning of wave 1 right here, which looks like it's a 190, then that invalidates this being a wave 1, and that would turn this into an ABC correction, and the impulsive wave would go off of the table. Now, if this is impulsive, what I'm looking for ultimately, like I said, targets to the downside, landing around the 160 area, and then obviously we can look at it from there and see what that turns out to plan to be, because that could still turn into overall as a wave 1 to the something further to the downside. If this is a ABC and a correction, what could we be looking for then? So what I'm looking for right now is this B wave to come up roughly around up here, double top, and then have a C wave down. And the C wave would end at a maximum roughly 168 is where the C wave would move as a maximum. Now, it can stop at different fibs along the way, and we can pull some extensions because C wave is going to be a 5-wave move that's a little bit easier to look at, a little bit easier to count. And most commonly for a C wave would be the 1-to-1, 1.236, 1.32, 1.618. Do have some confluence right here with this longer term trend line that we have, roughly 173. So we'll pay attention to that, see what it looks like. But that is if the move goes up to 189. So I'm looking at this wave here as a 5-wave structure for the C wave to come up here. Now this 4th wave, it has 3 waves in it. It could be done. It is fairly aggressive. However, it did not go into wave 1 territory yet, so it's still on the table as a 4th wave. It is definitely pretty close, a little too close for comfort. Normally 4th waves don't retrace that far. However, it could still be on the table. So as of right now, that is still what I'm looking for, to have another 5-wave move up to come back into the 189, 190 territory, and then looking for a double top rejection and then start a 5-wave move down to either have the C wave or start at the wave 3 of an impulsive wave down. So that's what I'm looking at, guys. It is possible it could potentially just roll over from here, which I'd still be looking for an ABC. Only thing that would do is change the targets, but from right here, we would have to have another flat correction, and then start a 5-wave move down. As this, in my opinion, is pretty 3-wave, and I'm not seeing a 5-wave structure in it. So we'll have to go sideways for a little bit and then get the decision to go down. So that's what I'm looking for ETH, guys. As again, if you guys like my comments, or I'm sorry, like my content, make sure you leave a comment, share the video, smash the like, and I will talk to you guys later. Guys, let's dive into some Bitcoin. So again, as a reminder, I do Bitcoin and ETH together, primarily because they have a 98% correlation, meaning that their moves are going to be pretty identical. However, their wave structures are going to be different within them, and their obviously support levels, that kind of stuff, will be somewhat different as well. But because they have a pretty close correlation with that 98%, looking at both of them together and being an Elliott wave trader, it's sometimes easier to identify a wave structure in one versus the other, which could live a little bit more of an advantage in regards to where the price action is going to go. So as we dive into Bitcoin here, again, looking at the weekly, we didn't break any kind of major EMA. We still have this 13 EMA that we have yet to get over. We've tried, smashed our head on it a few times, and have yet to actually do anything to really break it. We've kind of come in a little bit higher, since the close. However, nothing too exciting, in my opinion. In regards to the RSI, we are barely above, this bearish control zone. Not a lot of movement, really kind of starting to roll over and tire out, it looks like. So that's one thing that we'll want to pay attention to this week, to where, are we going to break below the CMA, or are we going to kind of trade back and forth in between it for a little bit before we make our decision and go from there. Even on the daily, let's break that down a little bit. Kind of a similar story in regards to what I was looking for ETH, being a WXYXZ correction. It is kind of going out in a triangular motion, however, just not a triangle. RSI does not match it, and the wave structures on there are going to be a little bit different. So I'm still looking at this being overall as a complex correction, and in my opinion, still looking at this being a fourth wave, and still looking for a fifth wave move down. So basically what I had is that was our 1, and then this is our 1, 2, 3, 4, and this was our 5th, coming up for the 4th, and then back down again for the 5th. And we'll kind of see what this looks like as we move into it. Again, further targets will kind of play out as we start to get wave structures and go from there. But it is really kind of starting to tire out, it looks like, in my opinion, and ultimately start to roll over. We aren't, really doing anything that spectacular. And one thing I've been looking at too is, even volume has been decreasing quite a bit on this move, even from the middle here. We haven't seen really anything too exciting from a volume perspective outside of this fairly large dump that we had. So on the daily, that's what I'm looking for. Still a lot of EMAs that are above us. In regards to some potential confluence, we did come up and tag the 0.5, and that was from the overall retracement on the way down. I'm sorry, I'm gonna save that. In regards to the other EMAs, we still have some fairly large ones above us on the daily to really get above. Again, kind of similar story. This 13 EMA we've been riding for quite a bit. It's just been struggling to really get above. So we'll see what this next few days looks like, what it plays out. Just because, again, it's been a lot of sell pressure, and that 8K is starting to really kind of go out the window. Been talking about 8K for a little while, the $8,000 region for a bit, and there's been some others that have been calling for it, but it's starting to look a little bit more grim, in my opinion, of us getting up there, as this complex correction does look like to be finishing out, in my opinion. So we do have, from the RSI standpoint, does look like we may be potentially coming up some support on the 50, where we might get a little bit of a support come down from. But outside of that, not seeing a lot. We really failed to get into the bullish control zone. I'm not seeing any kind of divergence or anything play out yet. However, as we trail sideways for a little bit and kind of bounce back and forth, it can potentially play out. So let's go ahead and dive into the 15-minute for what I'm looking at here. So like I said before, I'm looking at this as the WXYXZ to ultimately play out. Again, complex correction after complex correction. Currently what I'm looking for is this to have a little bit more of a pump up. I'm looking at a high of really 72.60 for this to be a C wave. However, when it had this drop here, unlike ETH, it did retrace into wave one territory, so it is invalidated as a 5-wave move, which just means this really could be just drawing out for a B wave, have another 5-wave structure down, and then up again for the C. And then also one thing I want to pay attention to, so if you remember on ETH, we did have this potentially as a impulsive wave coming down. But I am looking at this as actually a little bit more of a complex correction, maybe potentially even a leading diagonal with these 5-wave moves, because we can count a 5-wave structure in there, but it's it can be a little bit unclear. It is a little bit or a little bit choppy in my opinion, for it to really have that leading diagonal come out to fruition. So we will see. So it's kind of on the fence. I'll have to dive into a little bit more detail, but right out of the gate, it does look like to be a little bit more corrective. So ultimately, being that this is corrective, looking for this to come up. Again, one more little pump, and then ultimately we need a 5-wave move to the downside to finish off this ABC as a 3-wave. Right here, how I have it right now is this 3-wave structure here would be our C wave, up again for the B, and B wave can go all the way up to the 1.236, which I would believe would be around 7,300. So we can move up correctively up that high and then back down again for a C. I don't quite think we're going to go quite up that high. Similar to ETH, I'm looking for a potential double top from this last move up around 7,300-ish in that ballpark as a max, and then back down again for the C. So targets on the downside will kind of determine where that ultimately plays out. So if it did go up to 72, would look at 7,000 for the 1.618, and 2.236 would be around 69. Move that a little bit higher, about 69.75. So that's what I have for Bitcoin, guys. As always, if you like my videos, like my content, smash the like, share, and I will talk to you guys later.